Today we are touring in the Machane Yehuda Shuk. Machane Yehuda is a very famous Shuk market, open market in Jerusalem. It's very colorful. It is a place to buy fresh produce, vegetables and fruit and meat and cheese and fish. But it is also a place that has become a commercial center for enjoyment. There are many restaurants and pubs and bars here, and this shuk, this market, has an additional life. It has a daytime life that we can see now, and it also has a nighttime life where there's more clubs and restaurants and leisure here. So I invite you to come and visit with me in the Machane Yehuda Shuk.
For me, the Machane Yehuda Shuk is one of the most amazing places to walk around and explore. It's so colorful and full of people and activity and history and modernization, and everything is here in the Shuk Machane Yehuda. The fresh baked goods and the breads and borekas and rugelach and the vegetables and the different people who work here. It's really a very, very fascinating place. When we tour around the center of Jerusalem at many of the places, we notice the light train that goes through Jerusalem from the north, from the Neve Yaakov, Pisgat Ze'ev neighborhoods, then through the center of town, all along the Jaffa Road. We're on Jaffa Road now, passing by Machane Yehuda, and then it continues towards the central bus station, and from there goes all the way to the south to Mount Herzl. So the light train has become like an icon symbol of the center of town in Jerusalem. I hope to carry out a tour based on the train stations, where we can meet up at a train station each time at a different train station in Jerusalem, and walk from there to nearby neighborhoods and sites and learn about the history and architecture and communities in Jerusalem, and just explore many different interesting things. So of course the train station at Machane Yehuda and Machane Yehuda itself is there's so much to explore here on either side. We're facing south now, looking into the Machane Yehuda Shuk, the open market, but the name Machane Yehuda actually belongs to the neighborhood to the north of Jaffa Road. The neighborhood was originally called Machane Yehuda, but today many people don't even realize that the shuk was named for the neighborhood, and many, if they know the name of their neighborhood at all, they might mistakenly consider it Makor Baruch, which is the name of one of the neighborhoods in this area. There are a whole bunch of small neighborhoods north of Jaffa Road. Machane Yehuda was one of them, and this shuk that we are going to enter and walk through took its name from the Machane Yehuda neighborhood. Originally it might have been called the Beit Yaakov Shuk, or the name for the owners of the land that this shuk was built on. And it was fun to walk through the town, the city, the center of town, and see street performers playing their music and collecting some change from people who support their work. And I like to think that these street performers are standing there in the street performing, waiting for fame to recognize them and for them to be called in for more rewarding performances, and actually turn their passion into a profession and bring well-being to them and their families. So here we're walking south on Machane Yehuda Street. This is one of the main streets of the open market, and this street is a wider street. You can see that there's more space between the buildings on the left and on the right, but this road is not open for general traffic, so it's just people walking around back and forth and stopping at the stalls and buying the merchandise or goods that they would like to buy. And to the east of us, there's another road which is called Etz Chaim, the Tree of Life Street, which is named for the Talmud Torah, for the boys' school of Torah learning, which is just east of the Etz Chaim road. And many of the shops on the Etz Chaim road belong to the Etz Chaim Yeshiva. There are tours. It's a very, very, very popular internal tourism site, the Machane Yehuda Shuk. There are food tasting tours where groups are led by a tour guide and they stop at different eateries in the shuk for tasting, which is very popular. And there's storytelling tours. We might see some of the storytelling tour guides dressed up in costumes and guiding while they are performing. Here we can see this guy with the hat and the white shirt. He is a guide on the Machane Yehuda tour. I like to speak about culture and art in Machane Yehuda, to speak about graffiti, to discuss the ideas behind graffiti. Philosophy of graffiti is graffiti vandalism, taking paints and writing on walls or signs that don't belong to us, or don't belong to the people who are writing on them. And is that dirtying the private and public property? Or can graffiti be beautiful? Can it be a type of art? And here in Machane Yehuda, there is a gallery. There's an artist whose name is Sonny Solomon Souza, a young man who over the past 6 years has decorated hundreds of storefronts, painting figures, people, portraits of historical figures on the trisim. I use the Hebrew word trisim. It's like a type of rolling door, rolls down, and one of my friends sent me a comment and reminded me how to say trisim in English. Shutter doors? Is it shutters? I'm not sure. I can't remember exactly what the term is in English, but in Hebrew it's trisim. In any case, Solomon Souza decorated about 250 storefronts in graffiti, painting portraits of historical figures, some Israeli figures, some Jewish figures from history, and some people from general history, like Mahatma Gandhi, and conversational figures like Meir Lansky, and rabbinical figures like the Baba Sali, and biblical figures like Samson, and Leonard Cohen, of course, and Yossi Banai. So it's very interesting to tour Machane Yehuda and to see the work of Solomon Souza and other graffiti artists who have decorated the shuk. And their work is more visible on evenings, at nighttime, or on Shabbat, when the stores are closed, and then more of the paintings are visible. Because when the stores are open and they open up their shutters, the art is covered away, so we don't see most of it. Walking around during the day, we're not seeing most of the art, and for that reason, the graffiti tours are more. There's more graffiti visible when the stores are closed. So that is a really interesting tour. Just discussing, seeing the graffiti and discussing the idea of graffiti, but also being able to discuss and learn about the different figures, the different historical personalities who were drawn here on the walls of the Shuk. Remember the Simon and Garfunkel song speaking about the words of the prophets written on the subway walls. We can think about that too. But there's more art and culture to be seen and learned about in the Machane Yehuda Shuk. The Banai family, who are a famous Israeli family of performers, theater, music, comedy. Yossi Banai is one of the very well-known names in Israeli theater and comedy, and the Gashash Achiver, Gavri Banai, his brother, and younger generations of Banai, Ehud Banai, Meir Banai, Elisha Banai, Orna Banai, so many of these families who have given so much to Israeli culture. This family came from the Shuk. That means they were born here in the Shuk. That means their parents built a home and they grew up here in Machane Yehuda. So when touring on Machane Yehuda, we can go to the building where their home stood, Rehov Ha'agas Echad, Pear Street, number 1, which today is called the Bana Street, named Banai for their grandfather who built the home here and was honored by the city when they changed the name of their street, Rehov Ha'agas, to Rehov Banai. And on one of the storefronts near their home, Solomon Souza drew a picture of Yossi Banai. And understand, the Banai family have been recognized as cultural icons in Israel. 2 of the brothers received the Chatan Pras Israel, one of the most prestigious awards in Israel, the Israel Prize, Yossi Banai, for his acting career. And Gavri Banai is part of the comedy team of Gashash Achiver. Both of them, they are recognized by the state of Israel for their contribution to Israeli culture through their performance. And across the street in the Nachlaot neighborhood, there's a synagogue that is nicknamed the Banaim synagogue, the synagogue of the Banai family, because this family would pray there at the synagogue. It's an old synagogue. It's about over 100 years old, and on Shabbat there is there are prayers there at the synagogue. A young community sings the Kabbalat Shabbat, the Shabbat songs, in the tradition of Rabbi Shlomo Karlibach. So you need to be there on Erev Shabbat, on Friday night, to enjoy that event. I was there a few weeks ago with my wife, Mali, and we prayed at the synagogue, and that was really an uplifting experience. And across the street in Nachlaot too, Yitzchak Navon, his father was Yosef. Yitzhak Navon, who grew up in that neighborhood, wrote a famous play about the experience of the neighborhood, and it's called Bustan HaSfaradi, the Sephardi orchard. And it's actually the most famous play in Israel. It's been performed the most times of any theatrical play, Hebrew play in Israel. And it tells the story of the Sephardic community that existed in this neighborhood. Across the street from where we are now, it's called Ohel Moshe. At that time, 120 years ago, the new neighborhoods that were built in Jerusalem were affiliated with different communities. There was a Sephardi neighborhood, there were different Ashkenazi neighborhoods, and this neighborhood, the spoken language was Ladino. Ladino was a Spanish Jewish language that was spoken by Jews who came from the Spanish Inquisition in Turkey and Greece. And in the play there are many songs and terms in the Ladino tradition that was the main language that was spoken in this neighborhood. So aside from all of the color and merchandise and people and activity that we see in the Machane Yehuda Shuk, there's also a great amount of culture and heritage. Another thing that we can learn about when touring in the Shuk is how this market came about. How the neighborhoods around us were built, some of the first Jewish neighborhoods that were built outside of the old city of Jerusalem. And at that time, 100 years ago, the city center was still in the old city of Jerusalem. So Jewish people who lived in these neighborhoods would walk to the old city of Jerusalem to buy their fruits and vegetables, but also Arab people from the surrounding Arab villages would hike with their merchandise to the old city of Jerusalem. So there were people coming from villages on the western side of Jerusalem and people coming from neighborhoods from the western side of Jerusalem, all going down into the old city and buying or selling their merchandise and then schlepping it, carrying it back to their homes. And at some point the merchants realized that it would be more convenient to sell their merchandise on the way, and they started camping out in this area that was a land that belonged to Chaim Vilero, who was a Jewish banker from the Sephardic community. And the merchants actually developed a tradition of having a market here even before there were permits to build the shuk. And later on, during the British Mandate, when the British wanted to organize the city, they gave permits and also forced the merchants to organize themselves and to establish stores and, I imagine, pay taxes, and take care of the sanitation and so forth. And that is how the shuk, that in short is how the shuk came about. So my friends, watching a video tour, walking around Machane Yehuda is fun, but it's not the same thing as actually being here on the ground and walking around the shuk and seeing the building and smelling the smells and tasting the taste of the Machane Yehuda shuk. So I urge you to organize and plan your tour and come to the land of Israel. And if you would like me to be your guide, I'd be glad to hear from you. And in any case, I'd be glad to hear from you. So if you watch this video, write a comment below in the comment section and let me know if you enjoyed this and what you think, and share any thoughts and any questions. Be well, and shalom to you from Jerusalem, the capital of Israel.